Hi, my name is Nina. I'm a tax advisor and an accountant from Audit Radis firm. Today's topic is the changes that occurred to the tax ordinance in Israel and relocation from Israel. And I'll give a couple of tips when you're considering doing that. I want to hit the bottom line straight away, the economical aspect of this, new trend from 2018, which is a hot topic, which everyone wants to know about and plan about and all that. It is, I'll just say in a couple of words, is tax havens or expats, people who live abroad in a place that has a beneficial tax system is very common, usually with pensioners. So this trend is not completely like that, but rather, it covers that as well, but it also rather is applicable to people who are leaving Israel and intend to come back. So where's the money? So in a bit, I'll just give a bit of an historical aspect. In 2003, up to 2003, the tax system in Israel was a territorial tax only. And if you know a bit of history, let's say a prime minister moved around abroad and gave lectures. While he wasn't a prime minister, later on he became prime minister. So this income, although he was a resident of Israel, giving lectures abroad wasn't taxable in Israel. That was up to 2003, and there was a big reform in 2003, which combined a territorial tax system and a personal tax system. So the personal tax system sees a person, an Israeli resident. This system sees all his income as taxable in Israel. And if a person comes from abroad and derives income from in the territory of Israel, he will be also taxed in Israel. I won't go into details, but there's income that is taxed, income that is not taxed, and so on and so forth. That was the big change. At the same, I think it was a big change was in 2008. There was what is known as a Milchin law today, with all the news that is going around Bibi Netanyahu. But that was around 2008. There was a version of a Milchin law also in 87, since 1987. But what does the Milchin law say? What does it say? It says that on one, in very few words, the person I'll cover not a new immigrant, but rather a returning resident. If a returning resident comes to Israel after he has been more or less 10 years abroad, he is not taxed on his passive income or his income, passive income from abroad, or his income from work or from a business abroad. He won't be taxed, and there is a 10 years exemption, and he doesn't need to report, and so on and so forth. So how is the relocation connected here? So for residents, but rather returning residents who come to Israel, if you relocate now, live 10 years abroad, you'll get that tax benefit. So if you are a high-tech employee, or if you are just a person who sees a business opportunity abroad, you can go abroad, accumulate your wealth, come back, and be exempt, not be taxed in Israel. So this is, in 2016, the law started to change, where a person is seen by the Israeli tax authorities as a resident, although he left for the first 3 years. So your count starts after 3 years. And this is very important, because if a person will go abroad, will stand in the quantity test, the two tests to check your residency. Your a quantitative test, which will count the amount of days you've been in a year or 3 years, and there's a quality or an essential test, which will check what are your connections to what is your center of living. So that's the thing. So for the first 3 years, if you left, the ITA sees you as still a resident, and you can. There's a big trend, because people went, and the law changed. They said, okay, if I have an argument with the authorities, therefore I will go and get a legal opinion, a professional legal opinion, and then they will start counting from my first day of detachment when I relocate. So, okay, that is regarding that. So that's the cash. The cash is also the 3 years, and the cash is making sure, and well, I'll go into that. I'll cover it point by point. So, okay, you have two options. You can relocate, or you can say to yourself, I'm still a resident, I'm living abroad, but I still have my center of life here and so forth. So, if you're still resident, you'll be taxed in Israel. But if you're a non-resident, you'll be taxed abroad. And let's say you're an employee. There's a lot of employees, high tech, that or people who are working abroad, Israelis leaving and working abroad. So if you didn't make a detachment and see yourself as a resident still, our office really gives you an ability to deduct more and save a lot of taxes. So there are two standards really which are applicable in that situation. First is, I'll say it in Hebrew, כללי מס הכנסה על בעלי הכנסה מחוץ לארץ. And the other one is תקנות מס הכנסה, ניכוי הוצאות מסוימות. So if you go to an expert, if you come to our office, for instance, we will check which one is best for you to use while you are abroad, to save you, where they save you as much taxes as we can. Okay, because a lot of people, all the high-tech people say, okay, I got, for instance, going to New York, I have a good work, I'm just making a detachment because the tax rates, I know, the country I'm going to, and the tax rates are lower. So now I'm going into the second topic, which is very important. You know the tax aspects, and not only tax aspects, but also considering healthcare, because, for instance, we have it in Social Security, but some countries, as I said, for instance, I'm going back to the this guy who left to New York, and he's going there. I have to go with their workplace, but let's say 3 years he's living there. He made a detachment, got a legal opinion. He might find himself, not covered, getting sick or something, and not having a coverage, and not having work, and not having a coverage, and find himself, with nowhere, might die in the street. I mean, it's common. So you have to know all the a lot of aspects that are, and tax aspects and social coverage abroad. Um, um, okay, and there's also, it's very important to go to a professional, because if someone is leaving, I'll make it more obvious. Someone is leaving the country, although he didn't need to report in Israel. He was an employee. He didn't need to report in Israel. The law changed in paragraph 131. The law changed where the person needs to report now. He's abroad. He is an employee. He might be, employee even over the same. Well, but an employee, he has to start reporting. He left abroad. So from the detachment date. Okay, that's Amendment 223. I'll just read it out. New section 131(5)(e) of the Income Tax Ordinance imposes a reporting obligation of any individual who goes abroad and, according to him, is no longer a resident of Israel. This is so long one of the two presumptions of the day states, stated the definition resident of Israel in the Income Tax Ordinance applicable that individual. Okay. So if you say I'm not a resident, then therefore you have to report for 3 years. That's the thing. So, I'm just gonna finish here. Okay, I'll give another example. A lot of British people would rather not make a detachment because the Israeli health system compared to the British health system is better. I mean, a lot of people in the COVID really enjoyed the fact that they were covered. So that's another thing. Costa Rica, for instance, you might say, oh, I can sit there, have capital gains, and I'm not paying any taxes. I'm going there. I don't need to work. I accumulated their money. I don't need to work. Sitting there, have capital gains. I'm not paying taxes at all. But would you like to find yourself, in a Costa Rica or hospital? I mean, you should think about health insurances and all that, stuff that is complementary. Another thing is Switzerland. I mean, it sounds a lovely place, but you might find yourself living in a canton where they just rip you off from, all your money. It all, you really have to look into it. Okay. So that's the first thing. When you're moving, you have to really investigate. And if a person has, for instance, we do have an Anglo-Saxon and European orientation, which we more or less know what the tax systems are abroad in Scandinavia, in Britain, in the USA as well. So maybe look for a tax expert which has already experience in the country that you intend to move to. So the second tip is regards the immigration tax. This is actually a paragraph in the law, which is quite an old paragraph. So you have two possibilities. When you leave, for instance, you have two possibilities. First one, if you have an asset in Israel, when you leave the country, you can pay a theoretical tax, okay, on the market value of that asset when you leave, or you can pay the taxes when you actually sell that asset. So it has to be, you have to consider, and an office can give you, an expert can give you a point of view to calculate which is preferable. I'll just give an example for instance. So they make it the calculation is that when you realize the asset, they will take into consideration how many years you lived in Israel and how many years you lived abroad. Let's say you're 20 years old, you have an asset that you inherited a house, and you're 20 years old, and you intend to move abroad till your, retirement or whatever. So you say to yourself, I have 60 years abroad, I have 20 years here. My taxes are lower in my new country for this capital. A house is not a good example. A house is not a good example because it's a territorial thing. It's not a house. Sorry. Let's say you have investment, you have shares in a company. Right? I said the territorial. I'll just connect the territorial and the personal system. So the territorial system will say an asset that is in Israel, an income from that asset will be taxed in Israel. An asset that is located in Israel will be taxed when you sell it. Will be taxed in Israel. So a house is territorial, but if you have a company, there's a change in that. So, for instance, you have a company, you have shares, you are a shareholder in the company. You can choose to pay now, pay later. I mean, if it's a company that is only a seed, okay, the market value now of a high-tech company, let's say in the genome research, and people think it's not realistic, and no one puts the money or whatever. So the market value might be very low, and you might not pay any taxes. But you yourself, you might have, the information, and you have or whatever. So you believe in it. So you won't, when you sell those shares, or you would make a lot of money and pay less taxes in your country that is your new country. Okay. Okay, I covered the social security, the healthcare, health tax. A lot of taxes can be. Federal tax. You have to really know what's sit and make the calculation of what is it worth the while, and not even that. Just be realistic. Might be you have a choice. You can choose to make a detachment, or rather not make a detachment. Pay the immigration tax. Okay. So usually, okay, in the year of the detachment, when it's, if you left on the 6th of October 2022, and you didn't leave, but that is considered, by the quantitative test, the detachment date, you will usually get a refund, because in that year, you pay the taxes in Israel, but you're already a non-resident, so you will get the money back. So that's a loophole where you have to check it. And another thing is, if a person wants to start counting from the first year that he left, and he takes a legal opinion, although he didn't stand the quantitative test, but he takes a legal opinion, but since it's in a debate, he still has to issue a report in the first 3 years. So in those years, if that person and the income tax and the Israeli tax authorities got into agreement that he did detach, he will get a refund from those 3 years. Okay. So the fifth tip regards documentation. So while you're abroad, I mean, we have experience here with people that left. They weren't Israelis, 20 years. Someone got sick in the family. They had to be here and suddenly found themselves, falling into the quantitative, by the quantitative test. They are residents. And I mean, the tax authorities has a record of your entrance into Israel. It has. So you have to keep all the documentation. It's very important. You have to prove that you are non-resident or that you are a resident as well. I mean, there are funny cases where, I mean, people who were, let's say, Scandinavian or, Danes all their life found themselves, the country, asked them to bring a certificate of birth. Well, the digitization just changed everything, and they, so keep all the documentations. If you have a rent, keep the agreement of the rent so you can prove that you rented out. If you bought a house, keep all the, that's a fifth. Fifth. So I was Nina, and I encourage you to press like and subscribe, and have a nice day.